Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
President Biden has been making huge waves in the manner in which he is regulating, or should I say deregulating, the use of the abortion pill. And this is something that we have been covering pretty extensively on Right to Life Radio, myself and Jonathan. The person that we have turned to, whose work has been maybe some of the most interesting and comprehensive work on this, we're delighted to say, is joining us as a guest. Her name is Melanie Israel. She's a policy analyst at the DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and Family at the Heritage Foundation, and we're delighted to have her on the show. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, Melanie, let's get started with something really important. Texas football lost its bowl game to Washington. How are you feeling? Are you recuperating? How are you feeling about moving to the SEC? I just want to give you my condolences for you're already kind of struggling a little bit in the Big 12. I don't know how you guys, what's your mental state right now? Just give us your thoughts.
Oh my goodness. We're a young team and things are looking up, and the games that we lost were close ones, not blowouts.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to keep positive there. I think things are looking up.
Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. Well, as a Notre Dame fan, I know what it is to be struggling with close to elite football. Although you guys have won one more national championship in my lifetime, so I guess I can't be bragging too much. So, all right. Now that we've gotten the important stuff out of the way, let's talk about policy. Okay. So, Melanie, your work, the thing you did that really caught our attention was your 2021 report that you did for Heritage, kind of laying out the history. Among other things, it laid out the history of the abortion pill and how it has been regulated over the course of the 21st century, and from the Clinton administration onward, basically, and the process it took to become FDA approved. So I want to talk about, I want to get to the history at some point, but maybe just cue in our listeners rather, about what has happened in the last month of the kinds of deregulations that the Biden administration has undertaken to make the abortion pill more widespread.
Right, exactly. It's already time for me to update that big paper that I had written because so much has happened since then. Basically, during the pandemic, the Biden administration didn't let a crisis go to waste. They used the COVID emergency as an excuse to exercise enforcement discretion on certain safety protocols for abortion pills that had really kept their distribution fairly restricted up until then. And so they used the pandemic as an excuse to temporarily weaken these safety protocols, and then officially did away with those protocols with some action that they took at the beginning of this year. So basically what they did is they formalized a process to allow abortion pills to be distributed through telemedicine, through the mail. And they also implemented a process for retail pharmacies like Walgreens, CVS, to be dispensing abortion pills to women, which is something for the whole, 20 plus year history has not been the case. These pills have really been, up until now, limited to being dispensed in abortion clinics. And
Right.
most, healthcare providers had no interest whatsoever in going through the process to be a qualified prescriber for these pills.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
just
part
wanna,
of a long, steady drumbeat.
And I do want to emphasize for the audience, and maybe you can clarify this, and I know this is very basic for you and for me, but I do find this is a point of confusion for the average Joe listener, that when we're talking about abortion pills, we're not talking about the morning after pill. And maybe you can just kind of explain that very basic reality.
Exactly. So things like the morning after pill, those are designed to prevent implantation, ovulation, things like that, to prevent a pregnancy from occurring in the first place. There's some nitty-gritty fine details to all of that,
Mhm.
but that's the gist of it. The abortion pills, those are actually designed to kill an unborn child in the womb,
Right.
up to 10 weeks gestation. The pill basically acts to cut off the hormones that are necessary to continue a pregnancy. And then you take a second pill to cause contractions to expel the child. So that's what we're talking about when we say abortion pills. This is a totally separate type of medication than the morning after pill.
Right. And I know that's basic for you and me, but I know that's a point that I always have to clarify when talking with people. So this is the kind of stuff, the abortion pill is actually being shipped through the mail, is now legally allowed because of how the FDA is regulating it, to be prescribed through telemedicine and shipped through the mail. Can you describe also, the shipping through the mail thing has become a big point of controversy, with the Department of Justice intervening to say that the U.S. Postal Service is going to ship this through the mail. We don't care about relevant state laws. So maybe explain what's been going on now in this new post-Dobbs world where individual states are outlawing abortion. Is the Postal Service just going to be delivering abortion pills into states where abortion's illegal?
Right. So that's where this new post-roe policy landscape is really so dynamic. Thankfully, there have been a number of states that could see this coming from a mile away. That the Obama administration had weakened safety protocols for these pills. The Biden administration was signaling that it planned to do the same during the pandemic. And so a number of states had already taken action to say, in our state, you cannot remotely prescribe abortion pills to women that you're not actually seeing in person. You cannot send these pills through the mail. That's not allowed. So, in those states, we did have some protections in place. Now, of course, that didn't stop bad actors who don't care what the law is from, you know, breaking the law and
Sure.
shipping pills anyway. And when you have an administration that's not interested in enforcing the law, that's a problem. But then what we have is the Biden administration Department of Justice weighing in and issuing a legal opinion for the Postal Service, essentially saying that existing laws at the federal and state level that have to do with prohibiting shipping abortion inducing drugs through the mail somehow don't apply in this context. And it's going to be very interesting. There's a lawsuit right now pending out of Texas that raises this point, among other things, about these abortion pills, basically saying that for the entire time that the FDA approved and has been regulating these pills, they've never actually acknowledged if they have the authority to let them be shipped through the mail in the process in the first place. There's never really been any kind of serious legal analysis there, and so all we have is the Department of Justice basically saying this law that says you can't ship abortion pills doesn't actually mean that you can't ship abortion pills.
So just to clarify for me, these laws, is this a state versus federal, like the state laws saying you can't ship abortion pills versus federal laws? So is this going to be kind of a federalism dispute, or?
This is going to be an all of the above dispute,
Okay.
both with regards to state laws, but also with regards to federal laws.
Okay.
I think we're going to see this playing out in multiple contexts going forward.
Okay. Well, now, so that's what's happening on the ground when it comes to the abortion debate. Now, we're going to wrap up this segment a little early to give more time in the next segment. But what I want to go through with Melanie is the sordid history of abortion pill regulation and deregulation, the way that Democrat administrations have been busy little beavers to bring the abortion pill to America. That is next. This joint production of Right to Life Radio and The John Girardi Show after this break. We're talking with Melanie Israel from the Heritage Foundation. She's here discussing the deregulation of the abortion pill that's been taking place over the last month from the Biden administration, allowing pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens to provide the abortion pill, insisting that the Postal Service should deliver abortion pills through the mail in violation of various levels of law. But one of the things that first attracted my attention to Melanie's work was her 2021 report on abortion pills and the way in which it came to be legal in the United States, the way in which abortion pills, abortion medication, mifepristone, came to receive FDA approval over the course of the Clinton administration. So, Melanie, in the next 10 minutes here, I want you to give the whole history of the abortion pill and how it's been regulated, tall order. But maybe you could describe for us the effort that the Clinton administration put in to bring the abortion pill over from Europe and have it receive FDA approval.
Sure. It's really a whole sordid history that involves international lobbying from the highest levels of the Clinton administration. The abortion pill itself was created in France back in the late 1980s. When President Clinton took office, one of the very, very first things he did was instruct HHS and people within his administration to try to get this French company to eventually market the drug in the United States and seek to get FDA approval. And so this was really, the United States going to them and asking, will you please come to us so we can approve your drug and have abortion pills available in the United States? That company was very hesitant, and there weren't really a whole lot of U.S. companies willing to raise their hand and say, yes, we will work with you, we'll manufacture this drug, we'll market it. And so it took a long time, but they were eventually able to get a group called the Population Council to find a manufacturer,
ominous sounding name
approval,
for
exactly. Handle all of the things with clinical trials and everything that's required as part of the new drug approval process. But that only happened after many, many years of intense lobbying from the Clinton administration at the highest levels of government, including the Secretary of HHS. So it basically took many years for them to even get the ball rolling. But eventually in 1996, they did start the process of that new drug application. But it wasn't until 2000 that the drug was actually approved, because they had to keep going back and forth with, all the details of the clinical trials and submitting data and all of that. So when the FDA finally approved these abortion pills, they attached a number of restrictions on it. Things like it can't be dispensed by
CVS.
Any, pharmacy. Exactly. It has to be dispensed specifically in a clinical setting. Not just any doctor can prescribe the pills. They have to affirmatively seek permission from the manufacturer to be able to prescribe it. So basically, under these restrictions, the pill was pretty limited to just being prescribed by abortionists in Planned Parenthood clinics. Your rank and file family doctors, OBGYNs, things like that, they were not seeking out to be able to be in the business of abortion pills.
A point that's often debated is about the safety of these pills. Now, obviously, it's 100% death rate for the baby, but basically the abortion advocates have been saying, oh, we need to deregulate the abortion pill, it's so safe. Well, maybe talk a little bit about the safety risks associated with the abortion pill, and some of the ways in which that information isn't collected, and just that this is not. I've heard Daniel Grossman, who's the head of the UC San Francisco Bixby Center for Reproductive Health, and he's like a major abortion policy advocate, particularly here in California. Literally heard him in the California state legislature say that the abortion pill is as safe as Tylenol. Maybe give some context to show that that's not the case.
Yes. It's all part of a long multi-year campaign that's all connected to the safety restrictions on these pills that they're trying to have removed. So the FDA had originally said that these pills, in addition to only being prescribed by abortionists essentially and only dispensed in clinical settings, it also required multiple in-person evaluations to be able to do things like accurately date how far along in pregnancy is this woman. These pills are only approved through a certain number of weeks
Right.
gestation. And over the years, the FDA has extended that later and later in pregnancy, even though complication rates increase later and later in pregnancy if you take these pills. They had also originally included stipulations that these providers had to keep track of adverse events because these pills can and do cause sometimes serious complications like hemorrhaging and sepsis. And there's all kinds of reasons that women can end up in the emergency room with complications, or up to now, 28 women who have died
And
after taking these abortion pills.
specifically drilling into that, I recall reading this, and maybe you can clarify for me. At some point, there was a move by the FDA to just stop collecting certain kinds of data regarding adverse health effects. Is that true? And what sort of data are they not collecting now?
That's been part of this long, steady campaign to weaken reporting requirements so that the abortion industry can then say, we're not seeing reports of complications. It ends up being this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're not collecting the data in the first place, then sure, you can say you're not seeing complications. So the FDA has done things like that over the years. Right now, providers only have to report deaths to the FDA, not
but nothing short
other
of death.
serious adverse events. Exactly. And the FDA reporting system itself has, weaknesses, and that gets into a whole lot of other FDA reform discussions. But what we do find is that when you dive into things like Medicaid data and looking at complications that women are coming in with in hospitals and emergency rooms after taking these abortion pills, one study found that looking at Medicaid data over like a 10-year period of abortion pills being introduced, the complication rate that they were seeing shot up 500%.
Oh, wow.
So we know that there are all of these complications happening, and yet the abortion industry has gotten the FDA to weaken its reporting requirements, and they actively tell women that if you go to the hospital and you're having a complication after taking an abortion pill, lie to your providers and tell them that you're having a miscarriage.
Right.
And obviously, the process of a spontaneous miscarriage versus an induced abortion are different.
Right. And that's why so much of this just feels so sleazy. Like, of course you're not going to, if you refuse to report things, of course you're going to have all these nice looking statistics. Yeah, 100% safe if
And
if you
the
never
safer
report it.
than Tylenol, the safer than Tylenol claim is just
It's
absurd on
unbelievable.
its face. They're comparing apples and oranges. They're comparing Tylenol overdoses.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's
to abortion pills. If you've already overdosed, like, yes, of course you're in bad shape.
Of course. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, and Grossman is aptly named. I'll just say that. Anyway, so now you've described how the Clinton administration had, 8 years working like a busy beaver to deregulate the abortion pill. The Obama administration had 8 years of further pulling away regulations. What happened during the Bush years? What happened during the Trump years? Is there any movement in the Republican Party to, in these last few minutes here of the interview, like, is there any movement in the Republican Party to put more restrictions on the abortion pill, or even to attack its FDA, approval, full stop?
Right. So unfortunately, during the Bush administration, the FDA didn't really take any action. They didn't, necessarily weaken regulations, but they didn't strengthen them either. And unfortunately, we saw the same thing happen during the Trump administration. And granted, during some of those years, the FDA was, of course, very busy dealing with COVID and everything that came along with that. But personnel is policy. And unfortunately, at the FDA, we really didn't see that kind of leadership to try to reinstate health and safety measures. I mean, look, ultimately, like you said, these abortion pills, they kill unborn children. They also hurt women and girls
Right.
across the country every day. And we don't even understand the full extent of how many people are taking these risks. And so it's been really unfortunate. However, like I said, a number of states have taken action to say, okay, the FDA, you might be weakening these health and safety requirements, but in our state, we are still going to require things like a prescriber accurately date a pregnancy so they're not giving an abortion pill to somebody who's 15 weeks pregnant, not
or someone
6
who's
weeks pregnant, things like that.
someone who's got an ectopic pregnancy or something. I mean, if you don't
Exactly,
scan for an ultrasound beforehand, I mean, that person's going to be in serious trouble.
Bad shape. Exactly. And of course, after the Dobbs decision, we also have many states where abortion is essentially prohibited in the first place. So there's no, abortion pill prescribing going on. But there's still a lot more that can be done because we have, of course, states like California who are setting out to be abortion sanctuary states. We have the Biden administration continuing to weaken these health and safety protocols that the abortion industry ultimately wants to be removed entirely. They would like to see abortion pills available not just prescribed by anyone at retail pharmacies, but available over the counter. That is how widespread they want these pills to be.
Yeah, well,
and so it'll take effort at the federal level for Congress, and there's a number of bills out there to try to address that we hope to see action on here in the new Congress. The reality of a divided House and Senate and a President Biden, of course, makes that a tall order, but we have to be having this conversation so that people know about the dangers of these pills.
Right. Well, and it's even, just so people understand, I mean, what kind of future this could create and why we've been so focused on the abortion pill in our show. I mean, my co-host Jonathan and I, we basically said, this is the most important issue of the 2020 election that no one talks about, because if you allow the abortion pill to be shipped through the mail and you allow telemedicine services to allow people to get prescriptions for the abortion pill, I mean, you've achieved the left-wing goal of universal abortion access. I mean, you can almost make actual brick-and-mortar abortion clinics, if you deregulate things the way that the left wants, you can almost make brick-and-mortar abortion clinics a thing of the past, where every smartphone's an abortion clinic. You you pull up your Planned Parenthood
and we
app,
see that.
and there you go.
We see that playing out in Planned Parenthood's business model. That over half of abortions these days are abortion pills rather than a surgical procedure. And it's no coincidence that in recent years, Planned Parenthood has been trying to diversify their portfolio and get into the transgender medicine business.
Sure.
Because of this changing landscape and how abortions are provided. So this is a long-term trend that we're seeing, but like you said, when you have an administration that's weakening these safety protocols, not enforcing current laws, it makes it very difficult to maintain some of that pro-life momentum post-Dobbs. So we have to get serious about it.
Yeah, well, and that's why, I was so frustrated during the election cycle hearing, Senator McConnell's done a lot of good things for the pro-life movement. I mean, God knows there are 3 Supreme Court justices on the court, in large part thanks to him. But to hear him say, I think, abortion legislation is best left for the states, and to kind of poo-poo Lindsey Graham's bill. I've talked with other Republican congressmen who all of a sudden they're the strictest federalists in the world, and I'm not sure if necessarily we should vote on federal abortion legislation. We should leave that to the states. This issue, particularly as it relates to abortion pills and FDA regulation and what the Postal Service is going to do, this is screaming for some kind of federal answer. I don't see how, I don't see how this can be purely a state-by-state effort. Like it needs state effort, but it also needs a federal response.
Exactly. Members of Congress cannot sit on the sidelines. The Dobbs decision did not mean that the abortion policy debates go back to the states and only the
Right.
states.
It
It
goes to
meant
the
that states now
legislatures.
get to say a lot more,
Yeah.
but it's ultimately the American people and their elected representatives at all levels of government who have a constitutional duty and a role to play in all of this. And
Right.
what's more obvious for federal intervention than a federal agency, the FDA?
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I mean, it's so funny to me how local politicians for years before Dobbs would say, "Oh, abortion's just a federal issue. I don't need to take a position on it." And now all of a sudden, after Dobbs, all these, federal politicians or members of the House or Senate, whatever. Oh, well, now abortion's a state issue. I don't have to do anything about it. It's like, well, listen, guys, you're just gonna try. You're gonna, just profiles encourage. Exactly. Like you guys are just the biggest bunch of spineless wimps ever. Well, Melanie, I feel like I could have you on for 2 hours, but I think probably for the sake of your time, we're going to let you go. I want to ask, plug all of your stuff anywhere where you want people to find your work or Heritage's work or anything. Let people know where they can find more about you.
Absolutely. So at heritage.org, we have a whole section on our website dedicated to life. So me and some of my other colleagues, we write about these issues from all kinds of different angles. On the policy side, legal issues, cultural issues, it's all there. We also publish commentary at the Daily Signal, which is our multimedia news organization. So lots and lots of resources there. And of course, the Heritage Twitter account is always actively engaging in promoting these pro-life pieces. So definitely hope people can check that out.
All right. And I'll also recommend follow Melanie on Twitter at Melanie_Israel on Twitter. There you go. So I'll give you.
I
give
do
you your
occasionally post about Longhorn football.
About Longhorn football, which is great. Okay, well, Melanie, hey, thank you so much for being on. Would love to stay in touch and hear more from you. As I'm sure this is not the last time there'll be some development with how the abortion pill is regulated. So anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. So I now want to shift to a local story where I think there is some kind of abortion connection. And this is a little speculative on my part, I admit, and I've been talking about it a good bit on John Girardi show over the course of the week. But I think it's really important because I do wonder if the closure of Madera Community Hospital had something to do with abortion. So hear me out. Madera Community Hospital closed down just a few weeks ago. Right. And this is a big story for us locally here in the San Joaquin Valley. In a big general news story, Madera Community Hospital was basically the only general hospital between Merced and Fresno, the only kind of general hospital that has an ER and et cetera. I know Madera County has Valley Children's, but that's just a children's hospital. Madera Community was serving a pretty vital role, providing all kinds of really important healthcare services to people in Madera County. And again, you have Mercy Hospital up in Merced, you have Community in St. Agnes and Community Clovis, Community Fresno, and St. Agnes and Fresno, but Madera Community was it in Madera County. So you're now going to have this situation where people in Madera County got to drive like an hour to get to an emergency room, or 30, 40 minutes. This is a very bad situation, and it's a real cause of concern for healthcare provision in the San Joaquin Valley. Now, why do I think this had something to do with abortion? Here's the reporting on it. Here's what we've seen reported on this from the Fresno Bee. Madera Community was in negotiations with Trinity Health. Trinity Health owns St. Agnes. So the idea would be, look, Madera Community was losing money, and the financials around it is pretty straightforward. Medi-Cal, okay, the partially state, partially federal funded health insurance program for lower income persons, where if you're at or below 138% of the federal poverty line, you qualify for Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal reimburses really poorly to doctors, clinics, healthcare providers, hospitals, etc. Madera Community's patient base was almost all Medi-Cal. It's a huge percentage of their patient base was Medi-Cal. Okay, rural counties in California, like Madera County, have lower average incomes, a much higher percentage of people who are at or below the federal poverty line, a much higher percentage of the population in Madera County is on Medi-Cal relative to the city of Fresno taken as a whole, or the Fresno-Clovis, sort of metro area. Lots of Medi-Cal beneficiaries. So Madera Community was serving all of these Medi-Cal people. They weren't making a ton of money off each patient. On top of that, all kinds of healthcare costs have been going up, 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 up. The reporting specifically indicated for Madera Community, they were paying a ton of money for travel nurses. So they didn't have enough nurses locally to hire, so they bring in travel nurses, and travel nurses are very expensive. They go from place to place, and you pay a premium because they're traveling to you. So Madera Community was losing money. St. Agnes, well, Trinity Health, which owns St. Agnes, was in negotiations to take it over, to negotiate some kind of merger. Because Madera Community is public, because of existing California state law, the merger proposal had to be run by the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. This is relevant. Rob Bonta is extremely pro-choice. He is extremely left-wing. Not only is, I don't want to bring up the personal thing, but he has brought it up. He and his wife, Mia Bonta, who is herself a state legislator, have talked openly about the fact that they themselves had an abortion. They aborted their child when they were younger, and it was sort of a difficult time in their careers. And they've been talking about how it was a difficult choice, but it was the right choice for us, and blah, 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 blah. So they're not just like kind of theoretically pro-choice. They are very open, active, vocal abortion proponents. As the Attorney General of California, Bonta is tight with the ACLU. He knows of the ACLU. He is not antagonistic to them. Okay. So Bonta, the ACLU was supportive of Ron Bonta to become the Attorney General. They were congratulating him on his nomination as Attorney General. They appealed to him to investigate things. So the ACLU in particular has had this campaign, is in active litigation, in fact, against Dignity Health and Trinity Health, the Catholic hospital chain that owns St. Agnes, among others. Why? Well, they've been promoting this whole campaign to go after particularly Catholic hospitals in rural parts of the country and rural parts of California that don't offer certain kinds of services, abortions, and various kinds of contraceptive procedures. Okay, if you go to St. Agnes, you won't be able to get, like, for example, a tubal ligation due to the Catholic principles underlying Catholic hospitals. The ACLU has been suing them for this under the theory that this is an act of discrimination, of sex-based discrimination against women, that this is basic women's health care, and St. Agnes is refusing to provide it, and that is an act of discrimination against women. Now, I don't think the case is very strong. It doesn't look like it's gone very far, but they are actively in litigation on that point. The reporting is that Rob Bonta, of course, by state law, Rob Bonta had to approve this kind of merger agreement between Trinity Health and Madera Community. Bonta, the reporting indicates, gave certain conditions that would need to be met. Now, what those conditions are has not been publicly released. St. Agnes / Trinity Health hasn't talked about it publicly, what those conditions were. But Bonta's office said that they instituted certain conditions to ensure healthcare, quote, access for the communities of Madera County, for the communities locally in Madera. Access. That word is a major buzzword on the pro-choice side, on the pro-abortion side. Abortion access is part of the mantra that abortion should be safe, legal, and universally accessible. It's not safe, legal, and rare anymore. They want it to be accessible. So if you've got a Catholic hospital taking over Madera community, what's that going to change? Well, it probably means that certain kinds of, if it's going to operate as a Catholic hospital, certain kinds of contraceptive procedures will not be done there, and abortion referrals won't happen. Formal abortion referrals won't happen. They're not going to do abortions. They're not going to refer for abortions. I want to ask this question. Now, a lot of the verbiage coming out of the Bonta camp was that this had something to do with Medi-Cal rates and continuing willingness to take Medi-Cal beneficiaries, that it was something like a money thing. But the language they actually used was very careful. Conditions to ensure access to health care. And frankly, it's not like St. Agnes or Trinity Health would go in with their eyes shut. They know if they're taking over this hospital, they need to serve a ton of Medi-Cal patients. So I ask this. What are the odds that those conditions given by the Attorney General's office, by Rob Bonta, what are the odds that those conditions included a requirement to continue doing abortion referrals, to continue doing contraceptive practices, et cetera? And ultimately, I guess I ask this question. Would Attorney General Bonta rather there be no hospital than a Catholic hospital? Are we going to basically have this result in no healthcare option for the people of Madera County rather than a healthcare option that won't do abortion referrals? I cannot believe. Now, there may have been other issues involved. I'm willing to say that, and I admit this is a little speculative. I'm sure Medi-Cal reimbursement rates were a major thing. But every doctor I've talked with about this has sort of agreed with me. There's no way that this wasn't brought up. There's no way that the ethical side of things about what St. Agnes is going to do, what the scope of care is going to be as far as it relates to abortion referrals, there's no way that wasn't part of the discussion. And when I ask, would Rob Bonta rather have no hospital than a Catholic hospital? I do ask that because a lot of the legal and public policy medical left who are super pro-abortion have expressed basically this view. They would rather have people not become doctors than be doctors who don't do abortions. They would rather have OBGYN. They would rather have people not be OBGYNs, stop practicing medicine, than be an OBGYN who refuses to do abortions. That's right out of the horse's mouth, okay? The articles in the New England Journal of Medicine talking about state laws that protect conscience protections for hospitals, for individual doctors, that they're openly advocating. You have figures like Ezekiel Emanuel, who's a major healthcare advisor to President Biden, who've argued in the pages of the New England Journal of Medicine that state laws protecting healthcare providers and their ability to conscientiously exempt themselves from doing abortions. And we have a bunch of those laws on the books here in California. Look, in California, a medical school cannot refuse you admission because you refuse to do abortions. You cannot make willingness to do abortions a precondition for going to medical school. An employer cannot fire you from a hospital or something because you refuse to participate in abortion. Doctors can't be forced to do it. There's all kinds of protections for doctors, for nurses, for other healthcare personnel in the medical school context, in the hospital context, in the employment context. There's all kinds of conscience protections that are on the books in California law to keep you from being forced to do abortion. And the pro-choice side, the pro-abortion side, wants to eliminate those provisions, which will result in, what's it going to result in? Well, if you're an OBGYN and your options are you either do abortions or you can't practice anymore, well, you're probably moving from California. Or you're going to stop practicing. If you genuinely believe that abortion is the killing of an innocent human life, you won't practice. You'll do something else. You'll move. And it seems as though the pro-abortion side is okay with that. Like they would rather they're actually okay with limiting access to health care so long as pro-life practitioners are driven out. So I guess that's my question. That's why I would say I wouldn't put it past someone like Rob Bonta, who is very much tied in with this world, who is very much subject to lobbying from this world, from this ACLU world. I would not put it past him to basically take the position that I would rather have no hospital than a Catholic hospital or a Christian hospital. I would rather have no hospital than a hospital that won't do abortion referrals, that won't comply with what I want here. And now, do I know this for a fact? I don't know. I do know this, that this is, why did we start the Oberyn Medical Clinics of Central California? Well, we started for a number of reasons. We wanted to provide quality prenatal care to lower-income women, and it's because there's this huge need. There's this huge gap in the provision of prenatal care in our valley. Basically, Medi-Cal reimburses so poorly that doctors don't want to take Medi-Cal patients, and if you don't want to take Medi-Cal patients, if all these doctors decide they don't want to take Medi-Cal patients, it lessens the number of places where people can go to get prenatal care. And if that happens, guess what? They have nowhere to go. And that's why you see almost, a quarter of all women in South Fresno don't get any prenatal care before they deliver. That's why, and that has to be, and it is a contributing factor to abortion rates. Basically, California has set up a system where, because of the weaknesses inherent in the Medi-Cal system and because of the tons of money and funding and effort that the state legislature is throwing into abortion, we're setting up a system in California where it is easier for a lower-income person to get an abortion than it is to have a baby. Much easier. So, that is the landscape, and I'm afraid that the closure of Madera Community is just going to feed into this even more. If Madera Community closes down, where are women going to go for prenatal care in Madera County? I mean, it's creating this enormous vacuum, and this is such a huge story, and I do wonder what role the abortion issue had in the scuttling of this merger between Trinity Health and Madera Community. And I really do fear that might have been at the root of it. If it is, it's a shameful thing, and I really think some more questions should be asked of the Attorney General's office about what kinds of preconditions they put on this merger. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time right here on Power Talk.